Deep in the heart of the remote countryside of Cornwall, shrouded in mist and mystery, stands Blackthorn Academy. Its towering Gothic spires pierce the sky, casting long shadows over the overgrown grounds. For centuries, this boarding school has been a place of whispered rumors and chilling tales. Students have vanished without a trace, and the halls echo with the faint whispers of those who came before. But the darkest secrets of Blackthorn Academy lie hidden within its walls, waiting to be uncovered. Enter Eleanor Whitaker, or Ellie, as her friends call her. A curious and brave young student, Ellie arrives at Blackthorn with a thirst for knowledge and a knack for uncovering the truth. Little does she know, her life is about to take a terrifying turn. One fateful day, while exploring the school's abandoned library, Ellie stumbles upon a hidden compartment. Inside, she finds a stack of old, bloodstained diaries. Each one belongs to a former student who mysteriously disappeared decades ago. As Ellie begins to read the first diary, she feels an eerie chill crawl up her spine. The entries tell of strange noises in the night, shadowy figures lurking in the halls, and a growing sense of paranoia that consumed the writer. But this is only the beginning. The diaries hold the key to a dark and twisted history, one that threatens to pull Ellie into its grasp. What secrets do these diaries hold? Who or what is haunting Blackthorn Academy? And will Ellie be able to uncover the truth before it's too late? Stay with us as we dive into the chilling diaries from the haunted boarding school, where every page holds a new mystery and every shadow hides a terrifying secret. Now turning to Ellie's arrival at Blackthorn Academy, the journey to the school was as unsettling as the destination itself. The winding road through the dense woods seemed to stretch endlessly, the trees closing in like silent sentinels. When the car finally emerged from the forest, the imposing silhouette of Blackthorn Academy loomed ahead. Its Gothic architecture was both awe-inspiring and foreboding, with towering spires that seemed to claw at the sky and windows that glinted like cold, unblinking eyes. The air was thick with an oppressive stillness, as if the very atmosphere was holding its breath. Ellie stepped out of the car, her suitcase in hand, and took in the sight of the school. The grounds were vast but overgrown, with ivy creeping up the stone walls and weeds sprouting between the cobblestones. The faint sound of a bell tolling in the distance sent a shiver down her spine. As she approached the grand entrance, she noticed the staff and students moving about with an air of quiet unease. Their faces were pale, their eyes darting nervously, as if they were all sharing a secret too terrible to speak aloud. Her first encounter was with Headmaster Alaric Graves, a tall, gaunt man with piercing grey eyes and a voice that carried the weight of authority. He greeted her with a curt nod, his expression unreadable. "Welcome to Blackthorn Academy, Miss Whitaker," he said, his tone as cold as the stone walls surrounding them. "I trust you will find your time here enlightening." There was something in his words, a subtle warning that Ellie couldn't quite place. Next, she met her roommate, Leela Hart, a spirited girl with a quick smile and a curious glint in her eye. Leela seemed to be one of the few students who didn't carry the same air of dread as the others. "You'll get used to it," Leela said with a shrug, noticing Ellie's unease. "The school has a way of getting under your skin, but don't let it scare you. There's more to this place than meets the eye." Her words were comforting, but Ellie couldn't shake the feeling that Leela was holding something back. As the day wore on, Ellie caught glimpses of the enigmatic groundskeeper, Mr. Holloway. He was a shadowy figure, always seen from a distance, his face obscured by the brim of his hat. The students whispered about him in hushed tones, calling him the keeper of secrets. Some claimed he knew every inch of the school's dark history, while others said he was cursed to roam the grounds for eternity. Ellie couldn't tell if the stories were true, but there was no denying the chill that ran through her whenever he passed by. By nightfall, the oppressive atmosphere of Blackthorn Academy had settled over Ellie like a heavy blanket. The halls were eerily quiet, the only sound the faint creak of floorboards and the distant howl of the wind. As she lay in her bed, staring up at the cracked ceiling, Ellie couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. The shadows seemed to shift and dance, and the whispers of the past echoed in her mind. Little did she know, her first day at Blackthorn Academy was just the beginning of a journey into the heart of darkness. Now turning to the discovery that would change everything, Ellie found herself drawn to the school's library, a place that seemed to hold more secrets than books. The library was a cavernous room, its shelves lined with ancient tomes and its air heavy with the scent of dust and decay. It was during one of her late-night explorations, guided by nothing more than a flickering flashlight, that she stumbled upon something extraordinary. Hidden behind a loose panel in the wall, she discovered a small, concealed compartment. Inside lay a stack of old, weathered diaries, their covers stained with what looked like dried blood. The sight sent a jolt of unease through her, but curiosity overpowered fear. Ellie carefully pulled out the first diary, its pages brittle and yellowed with age. The name on the cover, Sarah Blackwell, was barely legible, but the date 1922 was clear. As she opened it, a chill crept up her spine. The handwriting was frantic, the words spilling across the pages in a chaotic scrawl. Sarah's entries spoke of strange noises in the night, shadowy figures lurking in the halls, and a growing sense of paranoia that consumed her. She wrote of sleepless nights, of whispers that seemed to come from nowhere, and of a presence that followed her everywhere she went. As Ellie read further, Sarah's descent into madness became painfully clear. The entries grew more disjointed, the handwriting more erratic. Sarah wrote of a curse, of voices urging her to join them, and of a final, desperate plan to escape the school. The last entry was the most chilling of all. It was a single sentence, written in a shaky hand. "They're coming for me tonight." After that, there was nothing. No more entries, no explanation, just silence. Ellie's hands trembled as she closed the diary, her mind racing with questions. Who was Sarah Blackwell? What had happened to her, and why had her diary been hidden away, as if someone had tried to bury the truth? The weight of the discovery pressed down on her, and for the first time, she felt the full force of the school's dark history. The diaries were more than just old journals. They were a window into a past filled with fear, madness, and unspeakable horrors. And Ellie knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning. With the next phase of the journey in sight, Ellie's determination to uncover the truth grew stronger. The diaries were a puzzle, and she was determined to piece together the story they told, no matter how terrifying it might be. Now turning to the chilling tale of Sarah Blackwell, the first diary revealed a haunting account of a young girl's descent into terror. Sarah's entries began innocently enough, filled with the typical musings of a boarding school student, classes, friendships, and the occasional homesickness. But soon the tone shifted. She wrote of strange noises that echoed through the halls at night, sounds that couldn't be explained, footsteps where there should have been none, whispers that seemed to come from the walls themselves. At first, she tried to brush it off, convincing herself it was just her imagination. But the noises grew louder, more insistent, and soon she couldn't ignore them. Sarah's entries became darker, more frantic. She described shadowy figures that lurked in the corners of her vision, disappearing the moment she turned to look. She wrote of a growing paranoia, a feeling that she was being watched, followed, even in the safety of her own room. The once bustling school now felt like a prison, its halls filled with an oppressive silence that weighed heavily on her. She began to lose sleep, her nights consumed by fear and the constant dread of what might be waiting in the darkness. As the days passed, Sarah's entries grew more disjointed, her handwriting becoming erratic and uneven. She wrote of a curse, something ancient and malevolent, that had taken root in the school. The voices she heard were no longer just whispers. They were clear, commanding. They urged her to join them, to leave behind the world she knew and step into the shadows. Sarah's fear turned to desperation as she tried to resist, but the voices grew louder, more insistent, until they were all she could hear. Her final entry was the most chilling of all. It was a single sentence, scrawled across the page in a shaky hand. "They're coming for me tonight." After that, there was nothing. No more entries, no explanation, just silence. Sarah Blackwell had vanished, leaving behind only her diary and the haunting words that hinted at her fate. As Ellie closed the diary, she couldn't shake the feeling that Sarah's story was far from over. The voices, the shadows, the curse, they were still there, waiting in the darkness, and Ellie knew she was about to uncover more than she ever bargained for. Now turning to Ellie's investigation, her determination to uncover the truth behind Sarah's disappearance burned brighter than ever. Armed with the chilling details from Sarah's diary, Ellie began her quest for answers. She started by asking subtle questions around the school, hoping someone might know something, anything about what had happened to Sarah. But the staff and older students were tight-lipped, their responses vague and evasive. It was as if they were hiding something, or perhaps afraid to speak of it. As Ellie dug deeper, she stumbled upon whispers of a secret society that had once operated within the school's walls. Some students claimed it was a group of elite scholars, while others hinted at darker rituals and forbidden knowledge. Then there were the rumors of a tragic fire decades ago, one that had destroyed part of the school and claimed several lives. Could these events be connected to Sarah's disappearance? Ellie wasn't sure, but she knew she had to follow every lead. But the more she investigated, the stranger things became. Ellie began to notice things small, unsettling things. Whispers in the halls when no one was around, faint and indistinct, yet impossible to ignore. Cold spots in her room that made her shiver, even on the warmest nights. And then there were the shadows. Just like Sarah had described, they seemed to linger at the edges of her vision, disappearing the moment she turned to look. Ellie tried to convince herself it was just her imagination, but deep down she knew better. Something was watching her, waiting for her. Despite the growing unease, Ellie refused to back down. She was determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. But as the strange occurrences grew more frequent, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being drawn into something far darker than she had ever imagined. The whispers, the shadows, the cold, they were all pieces of a puzzle, and Ellie was beginning to realize that the answers she sought might come at a price she wasn't ready to pay. With each step forward, the line between reality and nightmare blurred, and Ellie knew that her investigation was only just beginning. Now turning to the second diary, Ellie's hands trembled as she opened the worn, leather-bound pages. This one belonged to Thomas Reeves, a student from the 1950s. His handwriting was hurried, almost frantic, as if he had been racing against time to document his experiences. The first few entries were ordinary, notes about classes, friends, and the occasional prank. But soon the tone shifted. Thomas began writing about strange occurrences, things that made Ellie's skin crawl. He described hearing footsteps in the halls at night, footsteps that didn't belong to anyone he knew. Then came the whispers, just like the ones Ellie had been hearing. Thomas wrote about a hidden tunnel beneath the school, one he had discovered by accident while exploring the basement. He claimed it led to the woods, where he had stumbled upon a chilling scene, a group of hooded figures performing some kind of ritual. The details were vague, but Thomas's fear was palpable. He wrote about a faceless figure that seemed to follow him everywhere, a shadowy presence that left him paralyzed with dread. As Ellie read on, Thomas's entries grew more desperate. He spoke of being chosen, though he never explained what that meant. He wrote about sleepless nights, about the faceless figure standing at the foot of his bed, about the whispers growing louder, more insistent. And then, abruptly, the entries stopped. The final page was blank, save for a single sentence scrawled in shaky handwriting. "They're coming for me." Ellie's heart raced as she closed the diary. Thomas had vanished without a trace, just like Sarah. Could the tunnel he mentioned hold the answers she was searching for? The thought sent a shiver down her spine, but Ellie knew she had to find out. With the diary clutched tightly in her hands, she resolved to uncover the truth about Thomas's disappearance, no matter where it led her. The whispers, the shadows, the cold, they were all connected, and Ellie was determined to piece together the puzzle, even if it meant venturing into the unknown. Now turning to the next chapter of Ellie's investigation, she knew she couldn't face the hidden tunnel alone. With Thomas's diary in hand, she confided in her roommate, Leela, who, despite her initial reluctance, agreed to help. Together, they made their way to the school's basement late one night, the air thick with tension. The dim light from their flashlights flickered against the damp stone walls as they searched for the entrance Thomas had described. After what felt like hours, Ellie's flashlight caught something unusual, a section of the wall that didn't quite match the rest. With a careful push, the wall gave way, revealing a narrow, concealed passage. The tunnel was dark and damp, the air heavy with the scent of earth and decay. As they stepped inside, the temperature dropped, sending chills down their spines. The walls of the tunnel were lined with strange symbols, carved deep into the stone. Some looked like ancient runes, while others were unrecognizable, their meanings lost to time. Ellie traced her fingers over the carvings, her mind racing with questions. What rituals had taken place here, and who had performed them? Further down the tunnel, they found remnants of old candles, their wax long since melted and hardened into grotesque shapes. Scattered around were fragments of parchment, brittle with age, covered in the same cryptic symbols. The atmosphere grew heavier with every step, the silence broken only by the sound of their shallow breaths and the occasional drip of water echoing in the distance. Just as they were about to turn back, a sudden noise shattered the stillness, a low, guttural growl that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Ellie and Leela froze, their flashlights trembling in their hands. Then, from the shadows, a figure emerged, its form indistinct but undeniably menacing. Without a word, they turned and ran, their footsteps echoing loudly in the confined space as they fled back toward the basement. The tunnel had given them more questions than answers, but one thing was clear. Whatever lurked beneath Blackthorn Academy was far more dangerous than they had imagined. And Ellie knew, with a sinking feeling, that this was only the beginning. Now turning to the next chapter of Ellie's investigation, she found herself holding the third diary, its cover worn and its pages yellowed with age. This one belonged to Margaret Dawes, a student from the 1970s. As Ellie began to read, she quickly realized that Margaret had been following the same trail she was now on. Margaret's entries were filled with frustration and determination as she tried to piece together the disappearances of Sarah and Thomas, the authors of the first two diaries. Margaret wrote about strange occurrences in the school whispers in the halls, cold spots in her room, and a growing sense of being watched. But what caught Ellie's attention most was Margaret's discovery of a secret room. According to the diary, this room held the key to understanding the school's dark history. Margaret believed it was hidden somewhere in the attic, though she never managed to find it herself. As Ellie read further, she noticed a shift in Margaret's tone. The once confident and curious student began to sound increasingly paranoid. Her final entry was chilling. Margaret wrote about a mirror she had found in the attic, one that seemed to reflect more than just her image. She described seeing shadowy figures moving behind her, figures that weren't there when she turned around. Her last words were a warning: stay away from the mirror. It's not what it seems. Ellie closed the diary, her mind racing. The secret room and the mirror, these were the clues she needed. But Margaret's warning lingered in her thoughts, a reminder that the answers she sought might come at a cost. With Leela by her side, Ellie knew they had to find the room, no matter the danger. The attic awaited, and with it, the next piece of the puzzle. Now turning to the next phase of their investigation, Ellie and Leela made their way to the attic, their footsteps echoing softly in the dimly lit corridors of Blackthorn Academy. The air grew colder as they climbed the creaking stairs, the weight of Margaret's warning still fresh in their minds. Armed with the diary's clues, they began searching for the hidden room, their flashlights cutting through the thick dust and shadows. It didn't take long for them to find the false wall, its edges barely visible beneath layers of peeling paint. With a shared glance, they pushed against it, and the wall gave way with a low groan, revealing a narrow passage. The air inside was stale, carrying the faint scent of mildew and something else, something metallic. The secret room was small, its walls lined with shelves cluttered with old photographs, yellowed newspapers, and strange artifacts. A cracked mirror hung crookedly on one wall, its surface reflecting the flickering light of their flashlights in distorted patterns. Ellie's breath caught as she noticed the mirror, the very one Margaret had warned about. But there was no time to dwell on it. On a dusty table in the center of the room lay a leather-bound journal, its cover embossed with the initials A.G. Headmaster Graves. Ellie opened it carefully, the pages brittle and filled with cramped handwriting. As she began to read, the pieces of the puzzle started to fall into place. The journal detailed the school's dark history, including the tragic story of Eliza, a student accused of witchcraft and executed by the townsfolk decades ago. Graves had tried to contain the curse, but the spirit of Eliza had grown stronger over time, claiming a student every decade as revenge. Ellie's heart raced as she realized the truth. The disappearances of Sarah, Thomas, and Margaret were all connected to Eliza's vengeful spirit. The room, the mirror, the artifacts, they were all part of the curse. But there was something else in the journal, a ritual that might finally break the cycle. As Ellie shared her findings with Leela, the two exchanged determined looks. They had the answers they needed, but the danger was far from over. The attic seemed to grow darker around them, the air heavier, as if the spirit itself was aware of their discovery. With the journal in hand, they knew what they had to do next. The ritual was their only hope, but it would require courage, and perhaps more than they were prepared to give. As they left the attic, the faint sound of a whisper followed them, a chilling reminder that the curse was still very much alive. The next chapter of their journey was about to begin, and it would test them in ways they could never have imagined. Now turning to the final diary, Ellie and Leela sat in the dim light of their dorm room, the weight of Headmaster Graves's journal heavy in their hands. The pages were filled with his confessions, each word more chilling than the last. As Ellie read aloud, the story of Eliza unfolded, a young student from over a century ago, wrongfully accused of witchcraft by the superstitious townsfolk. Eliza had been executed in a brutal act of fear and ignorance, her life cut short by the very people who should have protected her. But Eliza's story didn't end with her death. Her spirit, consumed by anger and betrayal, had returned to Blackthorn Academy, seeking vengeance. Graves's journal revealed that Eliza's curse was tied to the school itself, her spirit bound to the grounds where she had suffered. Every decade, she claimed a student, drawing them into her world of darkness and despair. Sarah, Thomas, and Margaret all had fallen victim to her wrath. Graves had known about the curse for years. He had tried to contain it, performing rituals and sealing away the artifacts tied to Eliza's spirit. But his efforts had only delayed the inevitable. The curse was growing stronger, feeding on the fear and pain of those who remained. In his final entries, Graves admitted his failure, his words tinged with regret and desperation. He warned that if the curse wasn't broken, it would consume the school entirely, leaving no one untouched. Ellie's hands trembled as she closed the journal. The truth was more horrifying than she had imagined. Eliza wasn't just a vengeful spirit, she was a symbol of injustice, her anger fueled by centuries of suffering. Breaking the curse wouldn't just save the school, it would give Eliza the peace she had been denied. Leela broke the silence, her voice steady but filled with resolve. "We have to do the ritual. It's the only way to stop her." Ellie nodded, her mind racing with the enormity of what lay ahead. The ritual described in the journal was dangerous, requiring them to confront Eliza directly. But they had no choice. The whispers in the halls, the cold spots, the shadows that seemed to follow them, it was all Eliza, growing stronger with each passing day. As they prepared for the ritual, the air in the room grew heavier, the weight of the curse pressing down on them. The final chapter of their journey was about to begin, and it would demand everything they had. The spirit of Eliza was waiting, and she wasn't going to let them go without a fight. Now turning to the confrontation, Ellie and Leela stood in the secret room, the air thick with tension. The flickering candlelight cast eerie shadows on the walls, and the faint hum of the ritual's incantation filled the space. They had followed the instructions from the diaries meticulously, arranging the artifacts and symbols as described. But as they began the ritual, the room seemed to come alive. The lights flickered violently, plunging the room into darkness before flaring back to life. A cold wind swept through, extinguishing some of the candles and sending papers flying. Ellie's voice trembled as she recited the words from the journal, her hands gripping the edges of the cracked mirror. Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and a ghostly figure began to materialize in the reflection. Eliza's apparition was both haunting and heartbreaking. Her face was twisted with anger, but her eyes held a deep sadness that cut through the fear. The room echoed with her screams, a sound filled with centuries of pain and betrayal. Shadows moved unnaturally, swirling around Ellie and Leela, as if trying to pull them into the darkness. Ellie steadied herself, her voice growing stronger as she addressed the spirit. "Eliza, I know what happened to you. You were wronged, and you didn't deserve what they did. But this isn't the way. You don't have to keep suffering. Let us help you find peace." For a moment, the room fell silent. Eliza's form wavered, her expression shifting from rage to confusion. The shadows stilled, and the flickering lights steadied. Ellie continued, her words gentle but firm. "The truth is out now. Everyone knows what happened to you. You don't have to carry this pain anymore. Let go, Eliza. It's time to rest." The spirit's screams softened into a mournful cry, and the oppressive weight in the room began to lift. The candles burned steadily, and the cold air warmed. Eliza's figure faded, her final expression one of relief. The curse was broken. As the last traces of Eliza's presence disappeared, Ellie and Leela exhaled, their relief palpable. The room felt lighter, the oppressive energy gone. But as they turned to leave, a faint whisper echoed through the halls, a reminder that some mysteries might never fully be solved. The journey was over, but the echoes of the past would always linger. Now turning to the conclusion, Ellie and Leela stood in the quiet stillness of the school, the weight of their journey settling over them. The curse was broken, but the memories of what they had faced lingered like shadows in the corners of their minds. Together, they gathered the bloodstained diaries, their pages filled with the pain and secrets of those who had come before. With a solemn determination, they lit a fire in the old fireplace of the library, watching as the flames consumed the cursed pages, turning them to ash. The crackling of the fire seemed to echo the release of the spirits who had been trapped for so long. Ellie looked at Leela, her face a mix of relief and exhaustion. "We did it," she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of everything they had endured. Leela nodded, her usual playful demeanor replaced by a quiet seriousness. "But at what cost?" she murmured, glancing around the library as if expecting something to stir in the shadows. As the last embers of the fire died down, Ellie reflected on how much she had changed since her first day at Blackthorn Academy. She had arrived as a curious, somewhat naive student, but now she stood as someone who had faced the darkest corners of the school's history and emerged stronger. Her bravery had not only saved herself and Leela, but had also brought peace to those who had been lost. Yet, as they left the library, a faint whisper brushed past Ellie's ear, so soft she almost thought she imagined it. She froze, her heart skipping a beat. "Did you hear that?" she asked Leela, her voice barely above a whisper. Leela shook her head, but the unease in her eyes mirrored Ellie's own. The school seemed normal now, the oppressive atmosphere lifted, but that whisper lingered in Ellie's mind. It was a reminder that some mysteries might never fully be solved, that the past could never truly be erased. As they walked down the dimly lit hallway, Ellie couldn't shake the feeling that the school still held secrets, waiting for someone else to uncover them. And so the story of Blackthorn Academy continued, its halls echoing with the whispers of the past and the promise of new mysteries yet to be discovered. Ellie and Leela had broken the curse, But the question remained, was it truly gone, or was it merely waiting, biding its time until the next chapter of its dark history unfolded? If you enjoyed this chilling tale, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more dark and mysterious stories. Until next time, stay curious, but be careful what you uncover. The shadows are always watching.